Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the spiritual guide archetype. How is the spiritual guide archetype showing up in your life? Maybe in your work, maybe in, just your family, your everyday life. Now, for this session, I'm going to explore a little bit about the general guide archetype in relation to Caroline Mrs. cards. And the reason I'll use it is just to make it easy for you to kind of understand where she comes from. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about looking at it from a spiritual perspective in relation to maybe your business and your career and your purpose. So we look at the guide archetype. This is Caroline's card. We do have, the light and the shadow attribute. And in its simplest form, I'm going to just read out what she says and then expand on further. The light attribute represents the nature of the divine. You could see God in life and in yourself. So it can be that light, divinity, God in life, and even within yourself and around you, right? The shadow element is when we place financial gain and control over imparting spiritual insight. And it's when we are, it's like going from the opposite, sharing and being in the flow and guidance. If we think about spiritual guidance as in guidance that we get, right? And guidance that we get, and it's so strong and it feels so natural, and that we feel guided to do something. It is coming from, there can be different energies when it comes from ego, when it's an egoic want, and when it's actually something from it's the greatest good of all, right? There's that light comes through and something where you're guided, and sometimes you're guided to do things that you don't always know why, but the guidance is so strong and so clear and crystal clear. And how could I explain it? It's like there's sometimes we're very intuitive in the flow, but there's sometimes we have this kind of power that comes through. And even though there's a lightness to it, there's a strength to it, right? And that guidance in its light, I suppose you could look at as in its energetic form. It is God, it's light. And particularly when we keep it pure, we don't try and bring too much, our own kind of perception, or sometimes if we too much try to make sense of something too much at that time, we're bringing in our own distorted ideas of what we think. And when you're a clear channel, if you think about people that were prophets and things and people that have guidance, that kind of guidance, they have to get out of their own way and they have to get out of preconceived ideas about things, because if not, they bring their own ideology and their own interpretation of something. And when you're a channel, you're bringing through something that maybe you don't quite understand why or what, but you have to trust. And it's just allowing it to be a clear funnel. Now, when we're running a business, the challenge is that if you're doing something just for money or so attached to everything about money, particularly if you are doing spiritual work or you're helping people in any capacity in their spiritual work, and you're so attached to the financial aspect, or even if there is hidden agenda, the problem is that the purity may not come through, because you may, how could you say, manipulate what you're being given, the information you've been given, or you may want to withhold only so much for a certain price. Now, this is a fine line, because we are all on earth here at the moment to support other people and to help guide them in a way, right? Now, even though I would say I'm a teacher in relation to stress management and things like that, don't like ever saying that I'm a spiritual teacher, because I think there can be a very egoic, even though maybe for marketing purposes, sometimes there's things that we try and use in ways for people to find us. I wouldn't. I think sometimes when we put ourselves out as this spiritual teacher, it can come from this egoic aspect that we know everything and that we have all the answers, right? When in so many levels that is not true. Everyone within themselves has the ability to access what they need to access and what the universe or God or light is want to share with them. But we don't have always all the answers. We can't always see the bigger picture. And the guide archetype in its light form is coming from, first of all, if you're guiding anyone, if you think about when we're being guided by light, some people, everyone comes from a different perspective, the Holy Spirit, divinity, light. When people feel that guidance, they know it's coming from like a higher aspect. Now, some people might say it's the higher self. Some people might say it's coming through in a universal way, and it's coming through that God aspect. Now, when we feel that, it has a vibration to it. It has a high vibration of light and frequency, right? Now, if you think about when someone is guiding you towards something, or if you think about if you're a child and you need a mentor, to help you with something at school, or a mentor to help you in some area of your life, or anyone needs a mentor. You need someone that has a certain amount of knowledge and wisdom and insight that is a bit wider, or maybe, how could you say? And I'm going to say this in just one way to let you think about, and I don't mean just to do with higher, I mean that they're able to look beyond what you may be able to see. So it's almost like someone has a higher perspective. It's almost that they have a higher view, as in, if you think about it, when we sometimes, if we're walking along a road and we only see what's in front of us, we have a limited view. But if we're on this up top, or maybe in a helicopter, we can see down and we can see a bigger perspective, and that's what I mean. So if you're a spiritual guide, or you're helping anyone in your business from a spiritual guide perspective, your role is not to tell them what to do. Your role is not to control. It's not a control, and it's not about, holding on to everything and saying, I'm only giving a little bit. And one of the things that I see is, see that sometimes when you're coaching or you're helping people, they're very reluctant in their business to give. Well, I'm not saying everyone, but there is some people who are very reluctant. They only want to just give a little bit. And even in their marketing, or when they're trying to help people connect with them, they can struggle because they're so cautious about giving everything away that they don't really give any wisdom or insight or anything away to help people get connection and trust, and to get people to really understand where they're coming from. Now, one of the challenges that I had through for many years was, I had a point about, I'm trying to think, it might be about 12 years ago now, time goes by. But I remember hitting to a point and I started to really question a lot of things. There were some things I had questioned. For example, when I went down the healing route, there was a few things that just kind of, I wouldn't say sat with me 100%. That's all I'm going to say at the time. And I was very young, but there was a few things that happened that I just thought, that doesn't sit with me completely. Is that completely truth? There was quite a few things, to be honest. And what happened was, it's probably one of the reasons why I chose to actually do a couple of, some of my levels. For example, when I done Reiki, I'd done different levels. I actually studied a lot of types of healing modalities that I never actually even ever used. I studied them, and then some of them I just left to the side. And one of the things that I always noticed was that it didn't seem as if many people asked enough questions. And to me, at the time, I didn't have maybe the maturity and the communication to understand it was discernment at the time. There was no discernment of asking people, and challenging people on things that may not be truth. And what I found really interesting was because I was talking to different people, was how much things were taught very differently. And I found, which kind of blew me away, was even, like, say, when you talk about Reiki and things like that, how many people were using all different types of symbols. And it seemed to be, and I remember one teacher, it was almost like, well, just pick what you want. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? And one of the things that I always questioned, that made me think about how sometimes in the spiritual community, people are so desperate just for when they feel that something else isn't right, that they just go to the next thing, was how much, for example, and this is not just to do with picking on things like Reiki, but it's just an example where it's easier to explain. But one of the things I noticed with Reiki was the lineage. And, I was lucky, so I trained in Reiki, it was well over 30 years ago. I think it's now nearly into about 34 years. But one of the things that I noticed was that, and some of the lineages, as you go to other teachers, that there is these people who change kind of things, and they start bringing in their own thing. Now, from that perspective, you have to be able to trust that that person got the right guidance, right? And we're bringing in the right. Now, even to trust where Reiki came from has a certain amount of trust, right? But one of the interesting things that would happen as I went along my path, I started seeing bizarrest things. And sometimes people would come to me seeking help after what they would say was attunements that went wrong. And I heard, when you're in the field and you know a lot of people and you have a certain level of experience and whatever, you hear a lot of things and you see things, and particularly when you're dealing with a lot of clients and students and things, you hear lots of things. And I started also seeing a lot of teachers who stopped doing certain work because of certain bizarre things going on. And one of the things that always made sure when I taught was that I knew that I couldn't possibly know everything. And I only had a small bit of knowledge. So when I taught, I always said to students, like, these are kind of some of the teachings that I was taught. I want to throw some questions in. What would you do now? And I would say, there were certain things about, distant healing. There's so many different views now, but, how that you could send people, and if they didn't, if the soul didn't want it, it would reject it and all that. And as I'd done other healing modalities that are very, very different from how Reiki works and other types of things, and once you go and you do lots of different types of healing modalities or even receive different modalities, they all have a different kind of essence, and how people actually, the process of the healing can be very, very different, right? And one of the things that I found interesting was how the energy was very different. Obviously, everyone has their own unique essence of energy, right? So you can feel that different for each student of whatever healing modality. But there was also something else. And what also I noticed why certain types of healing modalities really work really well for certain types of challenges very quickly. And certain other ones just seem, for most things, be more relaxing, or, that made me question things. And I then had some spiritual experiences when I was working with students and clients that concerned me, what I was picking up with a lot of healers. And nobody could really answer me with some things, and it made me go down. I was really desperately seeking answers. And one person actually turned up just at the beginning of this journey was my friend David. And basically, David had a workshop, and it was strange how it happened. I didn't know if he had them, but he contacted me online and he said, I don't know what it is, but I'm really getting a strong message that I have to connect with you. And he says to me, look, I'm running. He was coming down from, he was traveling down in my local area for that weekend to do a workshop, and asked if I would like to come or I would like to connect. And he says, I know it sounds really bizarre. And at that point, I couldn't connect with him for another reason, but he came and asked if he could come and to my home and come and visit me. And what he didn't know at the time, I had some really bizarre symptoms for, I think it'd been going on for about 6 months. I had internal bleeding. I didn't know at the time, but I had a mass, I had a benign tumour, and I had basically a lot of stomach issues and was really unwell. And my family were really worried about me at the time. And the hospital were kind of, I think, worried that it was really serious because there were so many things going on at the time. And I had basically spent all my savings plus a credit card on some private help to support me, and I had kind of run out of money at that point. And he appeared and said he had been guided. He didn't know why, but and when I understood what I did, he wondered if we could come to some arrangement where I kind of supported him with his business and he would do some work on me. And what I found really interesting was he'd done a lot of work of things that I was really wanting to do, but because of some of the health challenges that I hadn't been able to do some of these types of training. So he taught me a lot. And it's funny how when the student is ready, they say the teacher appeals, but so the guide or the mentor appears. And there's been many situations in my life where I've went really seeking answers, and I said, look, and I said, come on, I want someone that's going to really, really help me see more here. And I've asked to be given it. Now, what happened, but one of the things I recognised would be times when I would seek and I would be getting the wrong sort of people. But I was guided to where my ego, because at that time I wasn't open enough. I had a lot of fear about certain things. So I wasn't open enough to certain ideologies, ideas, and it wasn't to probably certain stages in my life. I'm going through certain hardships and certain extremes that pushed me to be more open. So those were the stages in my life where I was ready for that next guidance, right? Now, the interesting thing about the best guides and mentors are the people who have freely parted knowledge, who are not the withholders, they're not fearful, they are generous in spirit, they know that that's part of their calling and they want to share, right? Because it's coming from a greater aspect, right? And they're the people that really do the work. They don't just turn up to do their work as a hobby. And they don't just sit on something. The key with a guide, someone that is more of a guide, is that they are willing to explore. They don't kind of get stuck in one level or stuck in one ideology, one belief, and one view that they cannot see what's around them. And the interesting thing that I've found about most people that are really strong guides is they're very empathic. Well, yeah, most of them, I suppose, probably very highly empathic, but more very intuitive, sensitive, so they have an ability to be tuned into things. They're not disconnected. They're not disconnected from spirit. They're very connected to spirit. They're very connected to their soul, and they're very connected to God, like divinity. Where people that tend to be really, how could you say, struggle to share, and it's all about just about money and parting, and holding back all the time. They are very disconnected, they lack trust, and often they have not fully embraced their own path, their own journey, their own gifts, their strengths. They're not fully in. Now, I remember saying something, and this might give you some idea where I think the difference is with sometimes some people, how they're powerful guides. And I remember seeing Finney's follow, I think it's his second name, Lee Harris, I think it's Lee Harris, but anyway, I think his disease, but I remember him talking about, no matter if you like Lee or not, it's just something he said that I remember I really agreed with what he said. And I remember he said, like, before he started really making big waves in his work, I think he'd been doing something else and wasn't. I think he'd always been a musician, but he hadn't really fully embraced his sort of spiritual journey and his spiritual gifts. But basically, what happened was, I think he went to something, and the person that was taking this big workshop had more or less said, are you ready to completely surrender to your purpose? And he went, really surrender. Are you willing to let go of everything to fully step into what you're supposed to be doing? Are you willing to let go? And it's like almost like, are you willing to? We think about someone a spiritual journey or even a religious journey, just from an analogy perspective. If you think about a monk or a nun or a priest, when they take that undertaking, they let go of their connection in some way to all their material. It's like they're letting go of their material gains, the things that they've attached to. They've to let go of that attachment to their family and all the connection, all the things that comes with it, and they are giving themselves over to God, right? Now, if you're truly in a spiritual journey, you're giving yourself over to that divinity and light, and you are saying, use me as a channel. And that takes a certain amount of strength, courage, and maturity, right? And wisdom. If you're only looking at something from a business perspective, you're not fully giving over. You're coming with a kind of, well, only if I get this, right? Now, Caroline Myss touched on this at one point about how, sometimes, even in the spiritual work as a healer or a therapist, we can want to have seen this in the spiritual sector where it's became an industry where people, when you would usually be a healer or a therapist and things like that, it was all came from more a humbleness to help others. Of course, there can be the wounded healing, the rescue and things, but what I mean is there was a genuine desire. It was a calling, but a lot of people now come that they only want to enter the industry. I see things in groups all the time, and it kind of think people are missing the point here. And it's like, well, I remember I seen a post, for example, a couple of weeks ago, and it was someone, I want to be a spiritual coach, but can I definitely earn, will I be able to earn such and such? And I think it was like something like, I need to earn, and it's quite a lot of money for someone starting out. Say it was $20,000 or something. Can I earn that a month? I need to earn that a month. And that's where we've got to. We're attaching something. Now, I'm not saying that we all are, we'll all have a light aspect and we'll have a deserving, and we all deserve to have a healthy and happy life and an abundant life, right? But we all have different stories, we all have different lives, but also when you're attaching almost holding and saying, well, I'm only doing this if I get this? Are you spiritually surrendering? No, of course you're not. Are you allowing the spirit to flow? Are you trusting that you're going to be given what you need and what you know the universe is wanting to give you? That's a whole different energy. So being the guide is about, there's a certain amount of trust, there's a certain amount of surrender, because if you're guiding someone else, you have to be able to, it's almost like an initiation. You know, I don't want to go, when I was looking for, so go back to, when I've been looking for teachers at certain times, sometimes I've been very, very disappointed, because I've been looking and I can't really find people's backbone, the beliefs, the ideologies, and how much they stick to, and sometimes I've found it hard to look, for people for help. I want someone that is going to be able to stretch me and really lives their spiritual work from a really high level of integrity and level, and does the talk and has a broad perspective and can see things, and is going to stretch me. And sometimes when we are seeking the guide, it's like, we're actually looking for something outside ourselves, what is actually building our connection. So one of the things, like all of us, I had to learn was, Eileen, you really need to build your own connection. Of course, you get the right help, and you have to be open to the right help and open to where your blind spots are. And thankfully, certain people have also arrived on my path in ways that I never expected. Sometimes people arrived, and I've seen people when I really didn't think that it was almost that I needed, and then something would happen, and I realised that this person was going to help me. And I think I've said before, one of the teachers that helped me was Ed Stretcher at the beginning of the pandemic. And at that point, he brought something to me that helped me embody something, and it helped me tap more into my courage and strength. It was there, but it was almost like I felt I needed, and in ways it was a mentor or someone that had an energy of real courage and strength and had really done their spiritual work and worked. And he basically, he's the type of person that he goes to the top people around the world to learn. He was a bit of a genius, and and he was always someone that many top healers and teachers went to him for other things. And so why would I go to him was not just about that. There was also something about his energy at that point, that he had that very masculine, strong, where I felt that being an empath and a sensitive and a bit fluffy at times, I would say that I've always had a backbone, I've always integrity and tenacity, but a bit of a people pleaser, and always worried that I was going to offend people with truth, where I knew that truth was far more important, certainly in what we're in at the moment. Because you can see it, and one of the things that I know is being highly empathic. Lots of people are highly empathic and highly sensitive, for example, can really sometimes struggle with reality, and are so particularly so sensitive that tend to get into more neuroticism, that they become so like, please don't hurt me, kind of, or please don't offend me, that the wounding is so deep that you can't be truthful with them. They want everybody to pamper. Now, I wasn't quite like that. I just had a real challenge of understanding how to create boundaries. But there is things that I knew as an empath that I needed to armor up and to guide a lot of the people that I was working with through challenges that some of them I could see hadn't a clue what's going on. And I know there's still many people that even though most of the people that follow me are my clients or students, are very switched on, there is some of my types of work that people are still in the early stages of their spiritual awakening and their societal awakening. And they can't really see what's going on. They maybe see some things, but they're very blinded, and sometimes that's because just of their own shadow. And I knew from my journey that I had been given visions and premonitions about things, and it was partly about my own path and my role and what I needed to do. And part of that was having the courage to be able to speak truth and to say things that a lot of people weren't going to like. And maybe wonder what the hell I was talking about, but to be able to do it no matter what was going on and no matter what maybe personal attacks I was getting, from some close to me or around in relation to that something that was going to just help me, as I said, armor up, protect me, so that I could be a guide and a mentor for people that were going through the challenges. Because a lot of the business owners that I were helping were very switched on and awake, but they were crumbling because some of them, it caused relationship rifts. As I said, they were taking a lot of abuse by standing up for the collective, and there still are. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that I support, I believe in everything that they say, or even the people that I would say are in my circle that are more awake. Do I believe in everything that they believe and what their view of it? No, definitely not. There's a lot I don't. But what I do know is that as a guide or as a mentor, my role is to help in that position when I'm working, is to help guide people towards their own inner guidance. And one of the things that I think has been a great reminder over the last 4 years is how many people, how much of the mass population are so disconnected from their own spiritual guidance. They're very disconnected from their soul. They're very in their head. And even that, and people in the awake community, because they've got caught up in a lot of divisiveness. And we all can get triggered, I mean, you'll see me when I'm triggered. But the reality is, in our spiritual guidance, it's us being an open vessel for the light, for divinity, right? And when we are parting guidance for other people, it's not about us dictating anything. It's not. It's about us sharing maybe our perspective, sharing our insight, sharing. And when I mean wisdom, it's like when we talk about the crone and the wise woman, it's like you can have a granny or your mum or someone older that has some more wisdom and insight. Now, does that mean that everything that they say is true? Of course not, right? Does everything that they think is right, it doesn't, or correct, or is the way to do things? Of course not. But they can have a certain level of bigger insight. Now, at the moment with the awakening, it's very hard for people who are not awake at all to societal what is going on and spiritually what's going on, to help other people with those issues if they don't have a clue what's going on. Because they're very blinded then, right? And it's like one of the things that I still see is a lot of people in cognitive dissonance and want to hide their head in the sand and want to pretend everything's okay. And one of the things about a guide archetype is that it helps people see the divinity, but they're not hiding their head. Someone that's like a mentor or a guide, it's not someone that is going to be well, I don't want to see that part. We'll just pretend that doesn't happen. They have a certain amount of discernment. And one of the things that, the true guide has the left and the right brain. They have the intuitive side, but they also have objectivity. And they can keep calm and rational. Sometimes when we're very intuitive and very empathic, we're so overly involved that we can't look at things from an objective perspective. And the guide and the mentor in any capacity has to be able to be very intuitive, very soul-led, very, divinely guided, equally being able to take that and be objective and being able to lay it out in a kind of practical way for the people that they're supporting. And the guide archetype is needed at the moment to support people. It's not about telling people what they should think, right? And it's not trying to like really ram down somebody's throat what you think is happening and telling everybody that this is what's happening. It's, of course, I know there's some things about everything that's going on at the moment that can be very, very hard for us all, right? And we have to share, of course. There's some things that are factual information that we can all share. But the guide is showing up in us all, first of all, for us to ask to surrender. So if you truly want to be a spiritual guide in your work or a spiritual even mentor, it is the ability to say, I surrender and let go of my attachments, my agenda, and I allow the light, I allow God, the divine, to use me as a guide, to help me help others, to help them. And one of the things also with think about the spiritual seeker and explorer archetype, a lot of them are guides, but they're guiding people towards different adventures. So often spiritual seekers and spiritual explorer archetypes basically have this energy and insight, and where they've kind of dabbled, or not just dabbled, but often have studied lots of things. So they can help people look at a wide range of things and then allow them to find their own feet. But what they're doing is supporting them. So as a guide, you're supporting people and you can present certain things, but it's up to them to make then the decision which feels right. And a lot of people who teach spiritual tools and techniques, it's then about the individual finding, but it's about helping also them discern from the ego. What is the ego? What is the ego? Of course, there's aspects of the ego that have to be part of, the way we're living at the moment. But there's a lot of egoic attachments and egoic constructs that are breaking away, that a lot of people are going to struggle with if they don't have that ability to surrender, because they're so attached to this construct of how they want their life to be, that they don't have a good soul connection. When we connect with the soul guides us and can take us and places and beyond, and attract things that we never imagined, because we're allowing ourselves to go to that higher dimension. When we're trying to control everything, when we're trying to it's manufacture it, and it's almost like construct it from a 3D perspective, we're actually keeping ourselves stuck, we're keeping ourselves in the shadow element, and we're not being that free-flowing guide. We're not allowing the light, and we're not really being guided. We are being the ego, the mind is controlling us. So I thought I would share that today. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Have a wonderful day, and if you'd like to learn more about some of my archetypal courses or sessions, check out the link below. Bye-bye for now.